Yo, what up fellas, Baylike in the building. Welcome. Today we are watching a video by WillE, Priest in Burning Crusade. Is it any better now though? Let's have a look.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, WillE
Hello.
here. With TBC confirmed, it's about time we did a little bit of a class update. Let's take a look back at each class in the Burning Crusade, their performance overall, and hopefully help you make your choice moving forwards. We will be looking at...
Okay, we are looking at if the Priest is better. Let's get the bread.
The final healer to go on the list and the go-to healer throughout the whole of Classic. Versatile, powerful, and a staple of any raid, but as I'm sure you know, they are much more than just a heal bot. The DPS counterpart spec providing excellent raid-wide utility, which only improved considerably in TBC. Today, we take a look at the Priest. Despite having two identities between heal and DPS, you often had a real tough choice, trying to forge your path as a damage dealer, and were pushed to heal through perceived viability, raid performance, and especially through tier sets.
I mean, in the raids, it's not gonna be that hard to actually find a spot as a Shadow Priest because it's kind of like a niche spec. But I think it's going to be really wanted by the raid leaders because you are basically gonna be charging mana with your dots to your healers, and that's gonna be... It's such a big difference for the healers if they have a Shadow Priest in their group or not. It's literally a difference. And when you have at the beginning Resto Shamans who are not the most, I would say, mana effective, if they have to heal like a lot, Shadow Priest is gonna help a ton.
Majority of which only catered to making your heals better. And as we've seen so far with many other classes that supported a hybrid playstyle, Blizzard brought in many a change to assure you that a raid spot would have your name on it. And for a raid in TBC not to have a Shadow Priest is really unthinkable. Yeah. So then, let's make a start on this, shall we? What's new? Let's start with the Priest racial abilities because they still exist in TBC and some of them do change, as well as having new additions for both of the new races, which both support the Priest class. First of all, the big news is now all Priests will have Fear Ward. Up until a later patch, it was only Draenei
finally
that had it. However, now it's on a 3-minute cooldown instead of 30 seconds.
Personally, I think the best PvE spec for Priest is gonna be probably Draenei because of the mana that he can give back. He has like a spell, he will mention it for sure. By the way, a lot of people are saying that the Shadow Priests are not viable in Classic. I would say that maybe on Sapphiron, because the match, the boss fight is a little bit mana intensive, it might be useful to have a Shadow Priest. But in Classic PvP, I would still argue that Shadow Priests are very powerful in Classic PvP. But the healer is of course powerful as well, so...
In place of Fear Ward, Draenei and Dwarves get Chastise, a 2-second instant cast immobilize effect on a 30-second cooldown, and it's pretty good in PvP actually. Yep. Both racials change for Night Elves. Illune's Grace is no longer dodge, instead it's just a chance for hit against melee and ranged attacks. 20% at that, not bad. And Star Shards is no longer completely useless, it's now instant cast instead of channeled. Still doesn't benefit from Vampiric Touch or Embrace, unfortunately. It doesn't do shadow damage. Blood Elves got Touch of Weakness, the same as what Undead have at the moment, and a new ability called Consume Magic, which dispels one magic effect off you for around 500 or so mana, and it can only dispel Priest abilities. In PvE, it sounds like you're probably just going to snipe off your Divine Spirit or Powerword Fortitude for some mana. Could be decent in PvP, a little down rank Renew or Touch of Weakness for free mana gains really. And Draenei on top of Chastise has a Symbol of Hope, which is instant cast around 1000 mana over 15 seconds for your entire party, which is actually pretty amazing. Should be castable in shadow form, sort of like how Powerword Shield is because it's a disciplined tree ability. Making
the Draenei racial is so strong for PvE, and especially if you're gonna have a Shadow Priest who is giving you money, he's gonna give you even more mana. He's gonna give you even more mana, so it's amazing.
Draenei look like the ultimate mana battery. No other of the existing racials change from vanilla. Ability wise, we have Mass Dispel, famous for its use in PvP to remove Divine Shield and Ice Block. Other than that, it tends to have niche use, removing up to 10 negative effects from friendlies and 10 positives from enemies. Binding Heal, which is kind of rarely used. It's like a flash heal that affects you as well as the target with a bit of a mana discount on it. Prayer of Mending, I've always really liked this spell. I think it's something about the sound when it just bounces all over the place. A heal that jumps between targets when they take damage up to 5 times. Super mana efficient if the heal will proc all 5 times, or even twice for that matter. It's great in PvP and PvE. Shadow Word Death, again a PvP playmaking ability. Instant cast, hits pretty hard, and if the target lives, you take the same damage back that you dealt. Whilst it sounds like a pure negative, priests in PvE are already self-healing a lot through Vampiric Embrace, and in PvP this damage backfiring can be used to break CCs if it's predicted,
break
such
police.
as Polymorph or Blind.
Hydra,
we have Shadow.
Hydra will tell you, he's a master at using Shadow Word Death back in the days, in Warlock era, in the golden era of WoW.
Fiend. If the mana bar does run low, pop this little guy to restore it back up again. It has really high avoidance and spell resist baseline, so isn't likely to be picked off by some random AoE, does shadow damage too, and just restores a whole lot of mana. Leveling wise, priests were already extremely strong in Classic due to their mana efficiency, but they really had to lean on their wanding for, well, pretty much the whole of Classic really. It wasn't exactly the most thrilling level experience, but the whole feel of never needing to stop was such a carry. Now in TBC they get a little spell at the bottom of their shadow tree called Vampiric Touch, which we will be talking about in a lot more detail for PvE, but suffice to say this puts more than just a bit more punch into your damage and mana efficiency. Whilst the wand will still be your best friend at lower levels or with less gear, it'll fall out of fashion over time as you naturally just get used to keeping that mana bar healthy through Spirit Tap whilst whittling opponents down with dots. It's worth a mention that 1/3 of your bonus healing is converted into spell damage in TBC, so even if you are holy at the moment, the Shadows playstyle will still be there for you. Also, all that bonus spirit will go a long way to making sure you never really go unless you're extra keen and you want to pick up some of those tier 2.5 tokens. That could be a good idea at the moment as well, or just go the dungeon route and stick to holy or discipline. Both those specs will work as well as ever for leveling as part of a group.
By the way, at the end, I would like to argue that in the end game, Resto Shaman is still gonna be the most preferred healer for PvE, for dungeons, and also for the raids. But I would say that if it wasn't for so much utility that the Resto Shamans are bringing, I would actually argue that the priests might compete with the Resto Shamans healing output. Of course, Resto Shamans have the chain heals that are just bouncing. Very simple, very effective. But priests, circle of healing, bubbles, I would say that priest is a really, really good healer. Just he doesn't have bloodlust and he doesn't have totems, and that's how it goes sometimes. But still, a really, really strong healer and a really needed one.
Too much other to say than that. I do like to keep this part quite short. Experiment with the class a bit during this time, see what works for you. Right then, PvE. I'd like to start with where I think the majority of the priest player base will be at the moment. I sound like I'm doing the paladin video again here, don't I? And that is on the healing side. So holy and discipline were both amazing in classic. You really can't go wrong picking a priest if you want to heal. Do they keep that power level in TBC then?
Yep.
Yes they do. However, they aren't so far and away in power level anymore. What they do keep is their versatility. There is no environment where your holy priest will not be useful. And if we are talking overall utility per healer, they don't quite match up to a shaman, no one does, but they can still be there on throughput, most of all when they're spec'd into focusing on their group-wide healing through spells like Prayer of or Circle of Healing, and even Prayer of Mending, while still also being a solid tank healer with greater heal spam. Down ranking is still a thing in TBC, and priests will need to do this to balance their mana pool with stop casting macros, because as fights get longer, your mana can struggle if you spam too much. So here is a talent tree for the big heals focused priest. Now if you played a priest in classic, it's a bit like looking in a mirror because there aren't a huge amount of things that are new. Inspiration is still great with your new AoE spells, Holy Reach is taken much for the same reason, Holy Concentration, I'm starting to see a trend in these talent names, is like clear casting for heals, letting you fire off a big greater heal when it procs. Spirit of Redemption is taken because free 5% spirit. Lightwell unfortunately still cancels its heal when you take damage. Empowered heals at the bottom for some scaling, and finally Circle of Healing, which is like a weaker Prayer of Healing, but it's instant cast, spammable, and really strong on throughput, but very mana intensive. Also note it heals the target and their group. You will probably also want an improved Divine Spirit Priest. Here's what it will look like. It's quite similar to the last spec, but just going far enough to pick up this talent. Make sure Divine Spirit increase your target spell damage and healing by 10% of their spirit. Their spirit, remember, not yours as the healer. Of course, not every class, healer or DPS really cares that much about spirit. Priests and druid healers are stacking spirit, and DPS wise we've got shadow priests, boomies, and to a lesser extent mages who have some spirit on their gear. So it can be a nice amount of free stats for a few classes. It stacks up very well with the human racial well, which is now 10%.
Personally, I would say if you want to make a dedicated healer for TBC, I would still argue with going Resto Shaman, as Resto Shamans are just gonna be the top. They are just gonna be the overlords of the healing, of the utility. But if you don't want to go Resto Shaman, Priest is very good second option. Very powerful healer, doesn't unfortunately have that much utility when it comes to comparing it with the Resto Shaman, but still really strong. So it depends. Maybe if you want to have all spec, Shadow would be more viable. So if your raid will need a Shadow Priest, you might be swapping to that one. We will see. I really hope that we will get actually the dual spec for TBC. That's gonna be amazing, because imagine, for example, that you are basically have a healer and he can just swap to the Shadow. Just very, very versatile. I would really love to see dual spec in TBC.
But the spec that really comes a long way in TBC is Shadow. Now, I've always liked Shadow Priest. Nothing to do with me maining a lock at all. Obligatory mention that the debuff cap was raised from 16 to 40, so you can actually press all of your buttons and not overly worry about pushing other beneficial effects off the target. Changes wise, the threat modifier on Mind Blast has gone, thankfully. Shadow vulnerability is nerfed down to 10% at max stacks. However, Shadow Priest bring a new talent called Misery that makes the target take another 5% bonus spell damage, so it's overall unchanged really. Shadow power is in to make your 2 spells that can crit a bit more often, and no, unfortunately, dots and channeled effects still do not crit or benefit from haste. Focus Mind for some mana saves, and the big new addition is Vampiric Touch, a new reasonably hard hitting damage over time that converts 5% of all shadow damage you deal into mana for you and your entire party. This is Shadow's big selling point, the reason why Shadow Priest became known as mana batteries, and the reason now I realise why I always got into pugs so easily back during TBC. This ability single-handedly solves your mana issues whilst also providing thousands of mana back to your party members over the course of an encounter.
By the way, if in PvP, is it true in TBC that if you're gonna dispel Vampiric Touch, is it gonna deal damage to the person who actually dispels the Vampiric Touch? I'm not sure about that one, but that's how it works actually in Votlk, or even now if you dispel Vampiric Touch, you're gonna get feared.
It's this spell that will always find Shadow Priest a place with the healers or arcane mages of your group. So yes, you won't be in the group with the boomies or the elementals for the free stats, but to be honest, you gain very little benefit from crit anyway, so it's not really a huge loss. Shadow Priests do fine enough early on damage wise, as dots are just good at the start of the game, but their lack of ability to scale beyond spell damage really hurts them, so expect to have more and more people overtake you as the expansion goes on. The Shadow Priest isn't there to top DPS meters, but they carry the raid in other ways, and unlike many other more utility focused classes, some raids may even take 2 Shadow Priests because they offer that much for free through their really good toolkit. If you like
Shadow Priest is gonna be amazing in TBC. If you want to go and play Shadow Priest, I'm pretty sure that you can find a spot relatively easy in the raid setup. By the way, I'm just thinking right now.
Like Shadow Priest in Classic, well, now your raid is gonna like you a whole lot more in the Burning Crusade. Moving on to PvP then.
Okay, fellas, that will be everything for this video. I will split it in half and make a part 2 for the rest of the video. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel, and write me in the comments what video am I supposed to check in the next video. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one. Sayonara, bye bye.